Welcome everybody. As you may knowing, we are running a series of webinars by Dr. Donald C. Martin. And in the same series, we have been taking for undergraduate bachelor level, as well as the graduate level, what we call the masters. In the same series, today we are taking the graduate school, the application checklist. It is very, very critical. Large number of Indian students are going to the United States. And we always look to go to the premier universities. And as the competition is flaring up, it is very, very critical for the students. We need to plan the activities properly. We go through the complete checklist. And to speak about the details of those with me, I welcome Dr. Donald Martin. As every time I introduce him, he was a former admissions team at University of Chicago, Columbia University. You may be knowing the Columbia Universities is the Ivy League, and University of Chicago Booth School of Business. This year, by USNEWS 2022 ranking, it is a #1 business school, and Dr. Donald Martin was a dean of Booth School of, so he knows in and out of what the admission criteria. He was with the Northwestern University, Wheaton College, more than 125,000 applications. He has evaluated and he has given the admissions or giving the admissions decisions to so many students. And after that, he has been working independently over large number of students, different countries, guiding them. Last 10 years, we have been working together with 𝐂𝐴𝐡𝐞𝐜 and Dr. Donald Martin, guiding so many students. And we have one of the best success ratio for the graduate students. And as I said, we need to go to great institutions, as well as there are a lot of different types of scholarships which are possible. So we will be discussing in different, even essays part of it, even how to prepare resume part of it, what is the importance of a letter of recommendations, even the interviews part of it. So we will be multiple in next 1-2 months time. We are taking different topics and we are working. So with this background, I welcome Dr. Donald Martin, and Doctor, please take this forward and educate the students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Diores. Hello, everyone. It is a pleasure to be with you again. This is our third webinar that we have done in this particular series related to the graduate school application process. I am delighted to be back with you. For those that have joined us before, welcome back. And for those who are joining for the first time today, I'm thrilled to have you here as well. And as you'll probably hear later, Dr. Diores makes these webinar presentations available on the 𝐂𝐴𝐡𝐞𝐜 website. So if I may refer today to something I've elaborated on a little bit more in prior webinars, that information is available for you to go back and take a look at. And so with that in mind, I'm delighted to be here. I'm honored to be able to work with Dr. Diores and his team. Those of you who've already had that privilege know how extremely dedicated, knowledgeable, and committed they are to helping their students. And I am very honored to have been asked to be a part of this effort related to the undergraduate and, of course, today, the graduate application process. With that in mind, what are we going to talk about today? Well, a few things. We're going to talk about the biggest mistake prospective graduate students, whether you're undergraduate or graduate, this is a major mistake you can make. We want to help you avoid it. The importance of planning ahead as you consider getting your applications ready. And so with that, I'll be spending most of my time today talking about a suggested 12-month application checklist. Now, for those of you who may be already in the process of applying for next year to start your graduate studies next year, please do not be alarmed when you see this word 12-month. Some of you, most of you, if you are applying for next year, you've already done some of these things. So I don't want you to be worried that somehow you've missed something. That's not true. But I will be suggesting various activities and very important components of your process that you should make sure you are doing well in advance of submitting applications. So whether you are a freshman in college, a sophomore, you're in your third year, your junior year, or your final year, this is still very helpful for you. I'll have a few closing remarks, then I'll share a little bit about my work with Astute, just a very brief demonstration of that. And then we're going to get to my favorite part of any webinar that I give, and that's questions. I love to answer questions. Now, you may not feel you have any today, and if not, that's fine. But if you do, please type them in the Q&A box here on this platform, and I will try to answer as many as I can when we complete the presentation. So don't forget, those questions are very valuable. I love them, and I hope you'll feel free to ask as we go along. If something I say, or even if there's something you'd like to know that I don't cover today related to the graduate school application process, please feel free to ask, okay? So let's dig in here. If I were to ask you right now, what do you think is the biggest mistake that prospective graduate students make? What would you say? And this is true of United States citizens as well as international students. This is true of the entire group of those considering graduate study. Now, there are some other mistakes you can make, certainly, but in my opinion, this is the biggest mistake you can make. And I'm going to give you about 10 seconds. I'm not going to ask you to say anything. I'm just going to be quiet for a few seconds and let you think about this. What do you think it might be? Okay, those of you who have already heard me speak on this topic, I hope you remember what the answer is. For those of you that are joining us for the first time today, let me share with you what I believe is the biggest mistake you can make as a prospective graduate student. And it is not doing adequate research before you apply. This is so important, folks. It really, really is. There's so much information out there now about graduate school options. There's so much you have, and it's free of charge. You don't have to pay anything for this information. And among all of the wonderful services that Astute offers you, one of them is whether they help you or I step in and help, we can provide you with a very large list of options for your graduate school education. Whoops, got a little ahead of myself there. I'm sorry. What I do when Dr. Dioris reaches out to me with some information on a prospective graduate student, I will do some very detailed research for that student based on their profile and knowing what type of master's program they are interested in. And do you know how many options I typically send to Dr. Dioris to share with that student? It's usually 40 to 50, not 4 to 5. You heard me correctly, 40 to 50 options. Now, of course, no one is going to apply to 40 or 50 graduate schools. Usually not. Most graduate students apply on average to between 7 and 10 graduate programs, somewhere in that range. But what you want to do is start with a much larger group of options to consider, and then you can narrow that down to the group that you will actually pursue admission. And this is very important. And I want to share this next. I hope you'll write this down. In addition to writing down what the biggest mistake is that you can make. Your perception, your idea, your level of interest in a certain program should be where you end up. What's that word there that I underlined? After you do your research, after you check these things out, then you have a better sense. You don't start out, in my opinion, you should not start out with your rank order of your options already in your mind. I believe you're doing a disservice to yourself. You should wait and give yourself time to do some research. Perhaps the astute team will help you with this so that you start out with a broader group of schools, then you narrow it down. So please make sure that you take the time. And even if you are planning to apply for next year to start your graduate program in the fall of 2023, you have plenty of time. If you start now, you will have time to do some very good research. And I hope you'll take that time to do that and not make that mistake. Many students who do this find options they didn't even think about, they didn't even know about at first. And some of those options end up being among the list of schools to which they apply. I've watched this happen for years. Every year this happens with my clients, with Astute and others. If you take the time to do your research, I'm telling you, it's going to mean a huge difference when it gets to the point of where you're going to apply and actually where you end up enrolling. Okay, now let's move on to my second point that I would like to emphasize today. That is the critical importance of planning ahead. Planning ahead. In other words, having things in order and organized and in place before you are submitting your applications. If there's a second mistake that prospective graduate students make, it's this: not planning ahead. Why is this so important? Well, there are 4 reasons that I suggest that planning ahead is so vital. First, it gives you time to do what we just spoke about. Do your research on your options. Really know them. Know as much as you can about them before you decide whether you will apply or not. Second, you have time to be a bit more calm and guided in your process. You don't get so rushed and feel under such pressure to get this all done in a month. That is almost impossible to do. So planning ahead lets you think about some of these things. Think about your options. Think about your applications in a relatively calmer way, where you're not so stressed and overwhelmed and nervous and feeling like you're behind and you can't get caught up. A third reason, many of the students I work with tend to, how can I say this? They will tend to divide their application process into 2 or 3 components. One of them being focusing on the standardized test or tests they may be required to take and trying to get those out of the way before they work on their applications. So they're not trying to prepare for the tests and then prepare their applications all at the same time. That's almost too much. It's just overwhelming. So starting well in advance, and again, even if you are in your final year of college, of your undergraduate program, or maybe you're a little older and you're planning to apply to start your master's program next year, fall of 2023, right now, if you have not done so already, is the time to find out what standardized test or tests you might be required to take and get working on them and get them. Try to take the test in July or August if you can, or even September, but you don't want to wait too long when this is also the time when you're trying to prepare applications. Then it's a bit of an overload. The last reason that planning ahead is so important is truly this greatly reduces the likelihood of your making mistakes that you didn't want to make, that were avoidable. That's the word I was looking for. You don't want to make avoidable mistakes, because if you do, especially with more selective programs, more prestigious programs, if your application has mistakes, you're going to be denied. They have too many other applicants who did follow directions and who did submit things as they were supposed to. So planning ahead greatly lessens the likelihood that you're going to make some of these mistakes. Now, please let me say here quickly as an aside, most applications have at least one or maybe two mistakes, a misspelled word or something that's that's understandable. Admissions offices, as an admissions dean myself, I didn't look for perfection, that there was never any mistake. But if the application just had mistake after mistake after mistake, then that was what posed a problem. So planning ahead, again, greatly reduces the likelihood that you're going to make numerous mistakes on your application. All right. So far, if you have any questions about what we talked about related to the biggest mistake you can make as a prospective graduate student or the importance of planning ahead, please put them in the Q&A box. We're now going to move to the major part of my presentation. And so many people say, okay, Dr. Don, if this is so important that I do my research, that I plan ahead, how can I do that and still get my applications in on time? Well, in my opinion, by being organized and starting early. And to help you do that, what I am introducing today to you is a suggested 12-month application checklist for graduate school. We're going to go through this in 4 segments, 12 to 10 months out before you apply, what you could be doing, 9 to 7 months out. Again, that's the second group. The third group is 6 to 4 months out, what you should be doing. And finally, 3 to 1 months out before you apply. Now, again, if you don't have a full 12 months before you apply, as I said earlier, don't worry. You can get this done, but you should be starting, if you're going to apply for the fall of 2023, you should be starting to work on these things very much now, and you probably already have. So with that, let's start with what should you be doing 12 to 10 months out. The first thing I recommend is that you create a spreadsheet, an application spreadsheet. What would this entail? Well, you could probably create this on Excel or another platform that you would use, but there will be 2 columns or 2 sections of this spreadsheet. One column will be your options. What are the options you are looking at? This is not where you're going to apply yet. You haven't decided that at this point. You're just going to put these on and do some research on them. And then the other part of the spreadsheet will be, what areas would you like to compare between these options? What aspects of this graduate program do you want to look at for each of your options? All right. Now, place your options in alphabetical order. Do not rank them yet. Please don't do that. Place them just so that you're giving each of them equal opportunities, shall we say. Okay? Place them in alphabetical order and then identify the criteria that you would like to evaluate for each option. Now, what might those criteria look like? Well, in my book, and by the way, maybe Dr. Dioris will mention this later in the program, but we have a book available for you. I believe it's free of charge. And this is the book I wrote. The second edition, the second printing was released just in 2018. And in the first chapter of my book, I list 26 possible criteria that you might consider for each of your options. Now, I'm not suggesting that you need to use all of those, but just to show you, that's how many there are. And there's probably more that I didn't think about, such as, what do you think about the campus? What do you think about this institute, where it's located? Is that something that is important to you? How large is the graduate program? How many students do they have? Some individuals like a smaller program. Others like a much larger program. Another criteria, what kind of curriculum do they have, and how do they present it? Are there lots of lecture courses? Are there interactive courses? Are there courses where I'll have to be doing a project with a team of my classmates and that's how I get graded? Is there an independent study option? Is there a thesis? What is involved in this program? Another criteria I would think would be very important would be, how am I treated by the admissions office? How do they treat me when I reach out to them? If I ask them a question, if I send them an email, how do they treat me? Another, if I attend an admissions event, let's say they have an online virtual admissions information session for the University of Michigan, and that's one of the schools you're thinking about, and you participate in that event. What do you think? What grade do you give them for their presentation? And two more, I believe, are critical here. Critical. What do current students or recent graduates have to say about this program? I hope you'll add that to your spreadsheet. And maybe you'll get in touch, maybe through your network. If you're working with astute, maybe they'll know someone who's currently at a particular institution or graduated recently. And when you contact them, here are two questions I suggest you ask every time. You may want to ask other questions, but here are two questions I definitely suggest you ask. Number one, what do or did you like most and least about this program? And they should be able to answer both of those. There's no perfect graduate program. No school is perfect because it's run by human beings and none of us is perfect. At least I haven't met anyone yet who's perfect, myself included. So they should be able to tell you, what did they like? What didn't they like? The second question, in my opinion, is even more important than the first. And it is this: if you had to do it over again, knowing now what you know about this program, would you still choose to go there? This is very, very important information that you should know as a prospective student for that program. So in other words, again, place your options in alphabetical order, and then what are the criteria that you're going to evaluate? And then do your research. Start filling in those boxes with the information that you have, and be sure to be honest with yourself. Don't try to rate a program higher than it really was on whichever criteria you were looking, just because you hope that you might be able to apply there. When my own students who I work with every year, I've worked with probably close to 700 students now, one-on-one application coaching in my work with Grad School Roadmap. And in addition to that, obviously, I've had the privilege of working with Tushar to provide some initial information up front to aid him in working with the students that come to Astute. But in this process, what I have discovered time after time after time, if someone does this properly, if someone takes the time to do their research, create their spreadsheet, fill in all the criteria, fill in the boxes, and are honest with themselves, they're going to change some perceptions. It's going to happen. It will. I've had many applicants who started off with a certain list of schools they thought were their top choices, and by the time they finished this process, some of those schools weren't even on their list anymore, or had dropped down, and others had moved up. That's as it should be if you're doing it right. So 10 to 12 months out, or if you're applying this year for next year, maybe you've already started this, it's not too late to set up a spreadsheet and start doing your research. And most of all, do it honestly. This is your education. This is your one chance at most people don't do 10 master's programs. I did one. It was great, but I don't want to do it again. So this is your chance to maximize the possibility of finding that just perfect option for yourself. Okay, now that's what we're talking about 12 to 10 months out. What should you be doing 9 to 7 months out? Well, this is when you should start planning, in my opinion, some campus visits or attending admissions events. And of course, for international students, coming to the United States to visit several campuses is usually not possible. That's true for students around the world. Europe, Asia, Latin America, Australia, Africa, they just can't pick up and come to the United States for 2 months and go around visiting campuses. The good news is almost every institution, whether they are in the United States or not, has a virtual campus tour on their website. And some of them, many of them, are very, very thorough. They're very good. They keep getting better as they do this because institutions know that this is one way students decide whether or not they want to continue looking at that program. So I urge you, go onto the website of your primary options, and I would say on your spreadsheet, put their campus visit or interactive campus visit or virtual, however you want to say it. What did you think? And then if these institutions are having admissions information events, informational sessions online, virtual, sign up. It's free of charge. You can't lose anything. And there again, between the virtual campus tour and the admissions information session, you've got some very, very helpful information to help you say, well, what do I think about this? How did they handle that information session? What do I think about the facilities, the campus, the location? So start doing this 9 to 7 months out. Next, start planning campus visits and admissions events. That's the first area for 9 to 7 months out. The second is, here again, if you are going to be taking a standardized test like the GRE or the GMAT, then this is the time to begin preparing. And as I said earlier, if you can take the test in July or August, that would be desirable. That would be helpful so that you get it out of the way. Or if that's the first time you're taking it and it doesn't go as well as you hoped, you have a chance to retake it still in plenty of time. So I suggest now, some folks start this even earlier, but certainly within 9 to 7 months of submitting your applications, this is when you should be, I think, preparing for your standardized test. Thirdly, this is when you want to reach out to current students and recent graduates. You heard me just talk about the importance of this on your spreadsheet. This is the time to be doing this. Now, you don't have to speak with 5 or 10 or 15 students. That's not necessary. But you should, in my opinion and my suggestion, at least try to speak with one student or one graduate from one of these institutions. So this, again, gives you time to do that. Not all of them may answer you right away. You may have to send a second message to try to reach out, but this gives you the time to ask those all-important questions of those students about what they thought about the program and whether they would go again if they had it to do over again. So that's what we're talking about 9 to 7 months out. Now, let's move to 6 to 4 months out. Here's where I suggest you do what you're doing right now. If you have a chance to participate in some admissions-related webinars, an astute has a whole array of these. This is the time to be participating in those. getting more information about the entirety of the application process. This is not so much now about an individual program as it is the general process of applying for graduate school. This is the time to do that. Again, you have plenty of time to hear what the presenter has to say, take some notes, and maybe adjust the way in which you will be pursuing your applications. A second, this is very important. Make sure your recommenders, you have them lined up. Now, they don't have to write their letters yet, but you want to make sure that they are lined up and confirmed. And the second part of this is so important. You need to provide them with some helpful information, your resume, your CV, a copy of one of your essays. It may not be the final draft, but an idea of an essay that you're writing. Maybe a paragraph about your short and long-term goals. You need to provide them with some information that will help them provide a good letter. Do you know, many times when I say this, students are very surprised, but it is absolutely true. And I believe I speak for many admissions deans when I say that 90 to 95% of recommendation letters are absolutely not worth anything. They just are not. They don't answer questions. They're very vague. They make it look like the applicant is perfect. That is not a good recommendation letter. So if you're in the 5 to 10% who have good recommendation letters, that's going to move your application up. It will help you greatly. So make sure that you have your we're going to talk about this more in depth next month when we have 2 webinars again in the month of July. We will be talking about every individual part of the graduate school application, recommenders, essays, test scores, interviews. I probably left something out, but it's in there, I promise you. And I'll have more to say about this next month when we delve into each part of your application in depth. Okay, and finally, make sure to finalize your resume and get copies of your transcript or transcripts. Here again, these things right here, if you have these ready to go this far out, then when we get to the next point I'm going to make, you'll see why I believe it's important to get these things finalized, your recommenders, your resume, your transcripts, test scores, and so forth now. Okay, why is that important? 3 to 1 months out, what's the first thing you're going to want to do? You want to open your application accounts and start completing them. And what do you need to complete them typically? You need a resume, you need transcript and test scores, you need information on your recommenders, and then you need to fill out some basic, what shall we say, demographic information, your name, your address, your nationality, all kinds of those types of questions. But if you've got all these other documents ready, you just can upload them or fill in the information. You can get started immediately. And if you do that, how does that help you? Number 2, okay, upload the documents, fill in the demographic information. And how does this help you? That gives you the chance to work on the final piece of the application, which is so important. That is the completion of your essays. Let's just say for a moment that even if you're applying for next year, for fall of 2023, that application accounts open in August. Okay? So you can go on, open them up, upload all your documents, fill in the demographic information, and let's say your application deadline isn't until November. You now have a very solid chunk of time to focus on those all-important essays. We're going to talk a lot more about essays next month in our application presentation, because this is, again, a critical component. But if you've done those other things 6 to 4 months out, or at least earlier on, then you're ready to get most of those applications complete. It doesn't take too long to upload a document or fill in your name and address. You can do those things, get them out of the way, and then have time to truly focus on what I consider, in addition to recommendation letters, one of the other most critical parts of your application, your essays. Okay, that's my suggestion for you related to your 12-month application checklist. In closing, a couple of very quick tips, just kind of by way of review, shall we say. First of all, what did we talk about? The biggest mistake you can make? I don't need to say it too much more here. Do your research. Do it. It's so important. Know your timelines and your deadlines. Make sure by planning ahead, you're going to remember, okay? In fact, on your spreadsheet, you may want to have a column that says, what is the deadline for this institution? That way you can keep track. Make sure you're remembering so that you don't miss one, that you don't end up inadvertently being out of contention because you missed a particular deadline. My third tip, as we said, get your recommenders confirmed, but that's not all. Don't forget, you don't just confirm that they're going to do this and then leave them alone. Now, you're not going to bother them and pest them every minute either, but you want to make sure they have information to help them do the best letter that they can for you. Number 4, when you can open those application accounts, do so. Your goal, in my opinion, what I encourage all of my students, the goal is to get those applications opened early as you can and get all of the basic information, just documents and demographic information, get it out of the way. Then you're relieving your pressure, you're relieving your stress because you know that almost all of your applications are complete, which gives you time to spend on what? On those all important essays. Next, here's another tip I hope you will really take to heart. This may seem very simple. You might say, Dr. Don, why are you even telling me this? Well, many applicants, especially those who are applying to what we might call the more prestigious institutions, the more highly ranked institutions, I think there's a concern, and this happens in the United States and outside the United States. Some applicants think that they aren't good enough, that their background, their credentials is just not good enough. So they need to try to pretend they're somebody else or come across as extremely whatever. And, you know, I don't know about you, but for me, when someone is not being themselves, you can tell they come across as fake. And if in an application process, admissions deans, we're not psychologists, we don't try to judge anyone, but at the same time, if you're not coming across as being yourself, it's going to hurt you. There's only one of you. Oscar Wilde, a very well-known philosopher, said it best when he said, be yourself, everyone else is already taken. Isn't that great? And that's true. Let yourself, your energy, your person, your personality, let that shine through. And lastly, try to enjoy this. I know that probably you could say, how could I do that, Dr. Don? There's so much involved with all of this. But in truth, try to enjoy this. It can be a learning experience for you. You can learn a lot about yourself as you go through this process. And by starting early, by planning ahead, you ensure that the process will be a little more smooth and that you might have a chance to enjoy it a little bit more. So those are just some tips in closing. Now, before we I think we have a few questions coming in. I hope there will be more. Let me just share with you very quickly about my work with Astute. As Dr. Diores said at the outset of our presentation today, I've had the privilege of working with Astute for over 10 years now, and we have had I'll let him share more about that if he wishes, but the acceptance rate, the work with the students has been very successful. It has been a very, very wonderful working relationship. I've enjoyed it immensely, and I'm so delighted to be continuing to work with the Astute Academy. We can start mentoring students. There's so many things to think about in the process of getting your applications ready and how you can stand out as a really competitive applicant. If you would like, we are available to do some mentoring with you as early as your freshman year or in your second year or third year. Whenever it is, we're available to be of assistance and help if we can be. We would welcome that opportunity. And lastly, some of the areas we have assisted with to date, of course, the school search, doing a short list of options. We've assisted with resumes, essay reviews. We can help with any area that we don't force anything on you. We don't say, okay, Dr. Dioris, we think this student should do this, this, or this. No. That's up to you and Dr. Dioris and his team. But wherever we can be of help, we are ready, willing, and able and honored to do so. Okay, thank you for staying with me through this presentation. It has just been, I just so enjoy these opportunities to present to quality students such as yourselves. I wish you every success in your upcoming graduate school endeavors. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dioris in case we have some questions. It looks like we do have a few, and I will let him take over to see what questions we have. Thank you again for staying with us, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Excellent webinar, Doctor. And this is really very, very important. 2-3 things, which is the planning is very research planning and the be yourself. So US always look for genuine students. They always look for student. And as the Dr. Donald Martin says, nobody is perfect in this world. So even if you may have failures in your life, you should be ready to accept those failures. It is most important what corrective actions we take. And that is a genuinity, be yourself is most critical part of it, besides the really a critical part of the being planning and the research part of it. So we have some questions already on the panel. So I will ask one by one the questions.
Okay.
So the first question is how the management or LLM students, the law students, law postgraduate students can get a STEM status for their graduate program. So the management students as well as the law students, post-graduation law students, how can they get the STEM status for because they get a 3 years of optional practical training for the visa part of it?
That's a very good question. I hesitate to answer for every institution because some of these types of specialized programs are guided internally by the particular law school or business school. So my strong recommendation, I'm not trying to evade your question, and after I finish, Dr. Dioris may have something else he would like to add to this question, but my strong recommendation is that you reach out to the program admissions offices for the schools you're considering and ask them that program, or it may very well be that this information is provided right on their website in terms of program information. That would be my suggestion. Dr. Dioris, is there anything else you would like to add to that?
Yeah, so most of the management programs are definitely a non-STEM program, but there are additional majors you can take it, like business analytics is one of the major. There are economics majors. So a lot of universities will take the economics major as the STEM program. So always along with your current program, whatever you want to do when you apply, you may, after even one semester, you can add the major part of it, and dual majors are definitely a common. And if you take the one major, which is a STEM program, definitely you can qualify for the STEM part of it. So there are students they do it, but currently there are the H-1B visas also students are getting it. It is not a major problem. But never should be compromised onto the career option. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Yeah. Again, another question, what should be the approach of doing research and the criteria for the research?
Well, that's a great question. In my opinion, this is a very individual process. Some of what you're looking for and how important some of those criteria are will vary depending on the person. So as I mentioned earlier, my suggestion is that you sit down before you even create your spreadsheet, if you wish, or just after you've done so, and ask yourself, what are at least 5 to 7 criteria that are important to me about the graduate programs I'm going to evaluate? What is most important to me? Is it the faculty? Is it the curriculum? Is it the way, is it the program requirements? Is it the class size? Is it the campus and facilities? Is it what the how the admissions office treated me? How do I feel about admissions information sessions? Were they helpful? What do students or recent graduates have to say? All of these things are up to you to determine what you want to evaluate. But my only suggestion as you do that is that you don't only look at a ranking. I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't do that at all. I'm just saying that to choose all of your options based on one criteria only, I believe is a mistake. You need many more criteria to evaluate. So once you get that spreadsheet set up, or just before you do so, you need to have a conversation with yourself. What is most important to who? To me. What am I most looking for in this program?
Yeah. And Dr. Donald Martin has written a great book onto this. So if anybody wants that free book, we can ship it free of cost to them. Just send us your postal address and we will be happy to send it. And in that, this question has been dealt very, so all the different criterias and all has been put it onto that. So I will request you to just send us your address and we will ship free of cost. We don't charge anything, even shipping also, we are not charging anything. And you can definitely have this book. Even if any of the college professors today are there, they want to look for in the libraries and all, we will be very happy to provide multiple copies for their libraries also. Yeah. Second question. Yeah. How GRE score impact on the admissions in best university?
I am very glad this question was asked, Dr. Diores. This is a very good question and a very timely one. As our audience may know, certainly Dr. Diores and I have been discussing this just between the two of us recently. The requirement for a GRE score is changing in the United States, in that whereas in the past, this was absolutely a requirement for all applicants, that they did have to submit the scores for the GRE or the GMAT or the LSAT, which is the law school test, or the MCAT, the medical school. There, you had to submit a standardized test score. When it comes to institutions that used to, all of whom used to require the GRE or the GMAT, that has changed. And there are two reasons for that. There has been an ongoing debate in the United States, I would say for at least the last 15 years, maybe a little longer, but certainly within the last 15 years, about whether or not these tests are helpful, truly helpful, to predict the success of a graduate student. And many are saying, no, they aren't. They don't really show very much. And so that's one reason why this has changed. The other reason was the COVID pandemic. As the result of that, and this other debate that's been going on for a much longer period of time, now many graduate schools, be they master's level or even doctoral level, are not requiring the GRE or making it optional. Some are simply stating, we will not accept these scores anymore. We don't use them as part of our evaluation process. You may have seen about a year or two ago, several Brown University, which is in the Ivy League, 14 of their doctoral programs completely discontinued accepting GRE scores. They don't accept them. Or if you send them, they don't look at them. In other cases, you can submit a score if you wish, but you don't have to. It's optional. So this is dramatically changing things so that the GRE score or the GMAT or whatever is not one of the primary criteria for admission anymore. And that's why taking the time to look at your essays, your resume, your recommendation letters becomes even more critical. And if you did not have the best GPA, if you have a GPA that is lower, depending on the institution, but anything lower than a 3.5, you may need to be addressing that. That doesn't mean you're going to be denied if it's below that. I'm not saying that at all. But you may have some explaining to do, especially now that GRE scores do not have the importance in the application process in many institutions that they used to.
Yeah, thank you very much. Another question, shall I choose research intensive universities or academic intensive?
You know, that truly, again, is a very individual choice. In my experience, in the 42 years that I have been involved with higher education in the various positions that I've held, I honestly say, I'm saying this truthfully, I don't believe that there's any difference in quality between a research-driven institution and maybe a bit less research-driven institution. In fact, in some cases, those institutions that are very heavily research-driven don't always spend as much time devoted to their students. The faculty are very much about their research, which is good. That we need research, that's wonderful. But sometimes that can interfere with their commitment as faculty members. And that's why on your spreadsheet, when you're comparing options, I would think you would want to know about the faculty of these institutions. Are they available to students? Do they actually teach? Or do they have someone else teach for them, a teaching assistant? You want to know this. So I don't believe that there's a difference in quality between research-driven or less research-driven. I think at the end of the day, again, it's about the program that they offer and what that program looks like for you once you've done your research.
Yeah. Another question about the culture of education. So what is the culture of education and treatment to students from the other outside of United States, particularly Indian students? So how they are the new culture and the treatment to the students?
I'm so glad you asked this, whoever asked this. That's an excellent question. And I'm going to make a general statement first and then move to something more specific. Generally speaking, the perception of students from India and their potential to do good graduate work in the United States is extremely high. Educators, that's the word I was looking for. Educators hold Indian students generally overall in very high regard. I did in my time at Columbia, at the University of Chicago. The students we would bring in from India were truly, absolutely outstanding. So there's a very high regard for students from India and for international students in general. Now, that said, some universities are more devoted to their international students than others. Some take this more seriously than others. And that's why when I suggest that you reach out to students or graduates, you need to ask them these questions. And you could even say, how was your treatment in the program as an international student? How were you treated? And they need to be honest with you, because they're overall, as I said, Indian students are held in very high regard, but individually on each campus, the way international students, including from India, are treated varies greatly. And that's something you want to do in your research.
Yeah, that's a similar questions to that related to that. Another student is talking about the teaching assistantship and research assistantship. So what is the difference and how we should approach getting this? So what should be the criteria and what is the process of getting teaching assistantship or research assistantships?
Typically, again, by the way, Dr. Diores, these are outstanding questions. This is really every time I do this, your audience asks such excellent questions. So this is no different today. So thank you for asking such excellent questions. I love this. In terms of the main difference between a teaching assistantship and a research assistantship obviously is in the name itself. A teaching assistantship would involve helping with the class, with the students, in whatever way the professor would want you to. Perhaps you would administer tests, quizzes. You might be asked to actually teach a class or two. I was a teaching assistant in my undergraduate, and I actually taught, and I graded papers, and I did all kinds of things to assist the professor. A research assistantship typically will be awarded from a professor to a student where the professor has been doing some research for a new book that they're preparing to publish, or a paper, or they've been given a grant from the US government to do some specific research, and they're looking for individuals to help them with that. So that's what a research assistantship would entail. In terms of being awarded one of these two types of assistantships, typically that is determined by the faculty once someone is admitted. They will meet together and decide who they would like to have as an assistant, either on the teaching side or the research side. So you don't typically apply for separately from your application. You don't have another application to be a teaching or research assistant. Now, in some applications, not all, but in some, they may actually have a section in the demographic type of information, and they may say, if admitted, would you be interested in performing a teaching or research assistantship? In my opinion, there's nothing wrong with you at any time you get the chance to say yes, absolutely. So you can indicate that you're interested. If they don't ask that question, that doesn't mean there's not a chance for this, but they may just decide this independently after they know who has been admitted and who has said they're coming. Something else to keep in mind. Most master's programs are 2 years in length, most of them. Oftentimes, a teaching or research assistantship is given to second-year master's students, as opposed, it could happen in the first year in some cases, but oftentimes that's something in the second year, because by that time, the faculty have gotten to know you and see your performance and see how you handle things in their program. So it may not be that this would be as available in the first year. It's possible, but most likely these would be awarded in the second year.
What are the other funding or scholarship options for the master's program?
Good question. In addition to research or teaching assistantships, there are other scholarship opportunities for all students, including international students. In my experience, the area where everyone is eligible, whether they are from the United States or not, whether they're a US citizen or an international, every admitted student is at least considered for some sort of scholarship help. This could be, it wouldn't necessarily be an assistantship now. It could be that, let's say your cost of attendance for 1 year is $70,000 US. Let's just say that's what it is. You could get a scholarship, free money, for $40,000. They could say, we're going to cover $40,000 of this first year of your bill. and you'll have to come up with the other 30,000. So any student, international or not, is eligible for scholarship help. Where there's a difference, obviously, is in the United States, we have federal loans, educational loans for US citizens or permanent residents. Unfortunately, if you do not hold citizenship or permanent residency status in the United States, those loan programs would not be available to you.
Yeah. So another question is, does the duration of masters matter? Does 1 year master course has a wide acceptance?
Absolutely, yes, it does. This, again, very much depends on the program that you are taking and perhaps your level of expertise coming into the program. Let's say, for instance, that you have a background in business or already in information technology or information sciences or engineering, and you are already a bit of an expert, if you will. You already have some pretty good experience in these areas, and there's a program that you believe will allow you to get what you're looking for in only 1 year rather than 2. That's perfectly acceptable. Prospective employers in the United States are not necessarily looking for the length of the program. What they're looking for is the quality of the person they're interviewing, their knowledge base, their background, their ability to handle the job requirements that they might be interviewing for. So here again, 1 year master. Now, if you'd asked me this 20 years ago, I would have probably said something differently. But now, based on the fact that there are so many 1 year master's programs, or some, there's also 18-month, a year and a half programs. There's a whole variety here. And it's not about the duration. It's about the learning and the quality and the individual. That's what it comes down to. Excellent question.
Another is, what is the major criteria for graduate applications admissions, and does the job experience really count?
Oh, if you have professional work experience coming into your application, absolutely that will be of help, without a doubt. In fact, as you may know, if you are going to pursue an MBA, a Master's of Business Administration, if you don't have work experience, that will hurt you. You will most likely not be admitted right out of college. Most MBA programs, whatever their prestige level, want you to have a minimum of 2 years full-time work experience. The average number of years work experience for most MBA students is between 4 and 5 after college. So absolutely, if you have solid professional experience, that any part of your resume that you have to share, which demonstrates your credentials, your background, your abilities, what you've accomplished, is very useful to the admissions committee. And in some cases, professional experience and professional expertise can help to balance out an academic record that may be just a little less competitive. Yes, excellent question. By all means, your professional background is important.
Yeah. There are a large number of questions, but most of the questions already we have answered. So I'm not really taking which is already been answered.
All right.
So what if my GPA is not good? Will there be any issues regarding the college admissions?
Great question. And I'm going to share something with you from a personal perspective here. My undergraduate GPA, are you ready? It was a 3.1. I was not a stellar, what I would say, I mean, it was a solid B average, but it could have been better. I did not apply myself as well as I should have, especially in the first year of my undergraduate experience. I came back, but it just, it is what it is, as they say. So in my case, what I was asked to do by the institution that admitted me for graduate school was to take 3 additional undergraduate courses and demonstrate my abilities. I did so and earned a 3.5 GPA for those 3 classes. So if your GPA is lower than you wish it were, and you believe there are extenuating circumstances, including what many students have happened, and that is that some of them just don't do as well in the first year or 2 of their, this is very common. This is not, there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make you look bad in any way. But what you need to do then in your application, whether it's in an actual essay or if the institution, many of them do, provide you with something that is called an optional essay or an additional essay. And the question for that is usually, is there anything else you would like to tell us about your application? That's the place to discuss. You can say, as you've discovered, my GPA is a bit lower. I would like to explain that. Not make excuses now. This is not the time to make excuses or talk about, oh, pity yourself. Oh, life is so hard. No, no, no. But you have a legitimate explanation. I didn't apply myself in the first 2 years, or I lost a parent suddenly during my undergraduate. I was involved in an accident. I had a medical emergency. There are many things that can contribute to a change of grades or a change of GPA, and they're perfectly understandable. So that's something you want to do. Then, if you have the opportunity, if you're starting ahead, far enough ahead in your planning, and you know that your GPA could be an issue, here's what I often recommend to my students. Take one, it can be online. It does not have to be in the classroom. You can take it online. One online graduate level course, just one, and get an A. Then, when you are explaining to the admissions committee about this situation, you can also say to them, however, I have in my list of transcripts that I sent to you, I took a graduate level course just within the past few months and I got an A. That is huge. That makes a great impact. So yes, your GPA is important. One last quick thing here. The further out you are from undergrad when you apply, let's say you're out of college 10 years before you apply for graduate school. Well, then your GPA is going to be less important because you have 10 years of additional experience there. If you're applying just out of college and the GPA is a bit lower, then it's a bit more important in the process.
Great. Maybe we'll take a last question.
All right.
How about the job situation in USA currently, this graduate?
The job situation here in our country has actually been improving dramatically, even though we are experiencing higher than usual inflation right now, and there is talk of a potential recession. They go back and forth on whether they think that's actually going to happen, but we certainly are dealing with a level of inflation we haven't seen for a while. But in terms of the job market, we have it's been incredible. They're adding new jobs every month in the United States. Now, again, for those of you that are thinking of applying, let's say, to start your program in the fall of 2023, and it's a 2-year program, you're not going to graduate until 2025. We don't know 3 years from now. It's a little hard to know what things will look like, but I will generally say this. Most graduate school applicants and graduates do not have difficulty finding work in this country if they wish to, especially if those students are from India. Again, the perception of the quality, the incredible work ethic, the level of intelligence, the hardworking style of Indian students and graduates. I mean this sincerely. I'm not just saying it to try to persuade you that you should come to the United States, but you should not be worried about the possibility of finding a job under most circumstances, even when our economy has had a lower job count, our graduates still generally from graduate schools do find employment.
Okay, that's very nice. One student has asked, do we help with the doctoral and postdoctoral programs also? I think.
I don't know if you want, I certainly am available. Absolutely. The work that I do is both with masters and with doctoral students. So I'm certainly available to Dr. Dioris and his team, whether it's masters or doctoral.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It was really a great session and great questions.
Wonderful.
And really appreciate spending the time. Thank you very much. Thanks all the students for asking the questions and joining. Definitely, as we will be recording, we will provide you complete transcripts of it. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
See you for the next series. We will communicate. The complete dates are already there with you. Thank you very much and appreciate it. Thanks, Dr. Donald.
You're most welcome. Bye-bye now.
Bye.